it came to Mr. Sensitive, he was both figuratively and literally sensitive. He had acne, a stomach prone to aches, and could not take a single joke on his name. He was another X, just like my dad, including stomach problems. Yet what made Mr. Sensitive an embodiment of my toxic attachment to my parents was his mouth. He loved to spar. When I told my mother I was unhappy or uncomfortable, I just had to deal with it. Now that I'm older, she tells everyone with ears that she was an incredibly soft, gentle parent that gave me everything. But the fact that my father abused me was proof that was not true. My father treated his shoes better than me, and I probably got stepped on more. Yet my mother could be really mean, and often it came under the desire to be critical without being criticized, and having any disagreement was turned eventually into a debate. The problem was that I was not someone to complain, in part because I saw how badly that ignited a war against me. Thus, when I said something, it was because I was at my limit, and somehow Mr. Sensitive managed to push it. Do you two even like each other? Said Josie, tensely laughing. It's hard to describe her voice beyond the emotional tactic, veiling through humor sincere worry. When it came to my exes, I simply dated mean men. I can't avoid it. It has been a problem my entire life. Growing up, I had mean friends, people that would throw me under the school bus before we got on it, and I always thought that meant they liked me. In perspective, it was a complete reflection of my parents and that age old adage they probably bully you because they like you. It was a quote even my mother said when the producer, Liam, took my songs and ghosted. Somehow, people making you feel small, even to yourself, was a sign they cared. To Josie, one of my first good friends, that was not true, and I wanted to believe her, but had never seen an example otherwise. We were at a costume party, ribbing each other like Logan Roy v. Kendall. It was like a nightmare version of Gilmore Girls, just one witty joke after the other that got so relentlessly tiring to watch and partake in that Freddy Krueger literally told us to stop. I do not know if it was a form of bickering, but I do know it was a form of dislike because I disliked it and always did. My mother never became my emotional safe space because to tell her one bad feeling was to open a window to her Virgo moon and have that wolf howl at me like I was foolish. Meanwhile, my dad saw me like an emotional purse, just stuffing me with whatever messy emotional scraps he wanted to sneak away from his other family. My life felt breathless, and words were daggers used to one up the person in front of you, and then ask them if they had a Dunkin' Donuts order. That was the funny thing. They could say the cruelest things to me, launch into a chess game of who's the pawn slash victim or who's the queen slash villain, and then ask me to pick up milk. It was the same with Mr. Sensitive, even with the paternal follow up of after I hurt his feelings, or he claimed I hurt his feelings, make me a sandwich. I hated it. What do you mean? His eyes darted at Josie and then me with a wry smirk. When you date someone toxic, you know what are their triggers. The problem is you never know what makes them happy, and it takes leaving them to see nothing ever would, including and especially you. When Mr. Sensitive smirked, it often was because he felt he got caught in a bad light. He was making fun of my body, my eating, my entire existence, just like dear old dad, and Josie asked what I wanted to know. Do you guys even like each other? Because you feel really disgusted by the other, she said. Did I say something? He continued, slightly angry and shocked. I mean, it's like on and on about how she looked, she said, sipping her IPA. She was dressed as a sexy mummy, which meant her boobs and toilet paper were all exposed. She looked like an ancient dead Egyptian goddess that resurrected just to call out my boyfriend's BS and toss some toilet paper at him. She gives it back, he defended himself. But you give it more, Josie said with Cleopatra quickness. She was unraveling the magic carpet ride Mr. Sensitive had rode in. He looked at me like I was going to defend him, and instead I joined her. You do, you started, and then I follow, and then you act like because I followed, we're the same. This is BS. I'm not going to have women gang up on me, he declared with the kitchen getting quiet. Nothing says house party quite like a designated room for people to debate giant social issues like women's rights or smoke weed. But you gang up on her looks, Josie came right back, and his neck was fully stepped on. But so was mine. My entire life I defended everyone and just accepted no one was going to defend me, or at least overstayed with people that would not. Josie was stepping up for me in ways I had never done for myself, and I felt grateful and embarrassed. As the room broke out into a weed infused discussion on how women and men should talk to each other and whether friends should step into their friends' relationships, I felt a devastation slightly come to light within me. It's hard to describe the feeling of I have not learned my damn lesson, but often why I found myself alone, either in or out of a relationship, is because I never had someone I liked talking to without the feeling of dreading talking to them, like Mr. Sensitive. All right, let's discuss, let's heal. Um, it was this weird moment of kind of we both were caught in like a deer in headlights because here was somebody, when you're in a very bickery relationship, you it's so I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like being on a reality show. And any person that is interviewed um, from a reality show, they always say like within a week or two, they forget the cameras are there. And that's why sometimes they're kind of shocked and they try to blame it on the edit. But like particularly shows like Big Brother, um, there's no edit. Like you're on. And there was this feeling of like, oh, like the cameras are on because we were, but that's how you know how toxic we had become because how you talk to people, talk to each other in public is a reflection of how you talk to your partner in private. So if you're really loving in public, I mean, imagine in private, nobody's looking. It is pure lovey dovey. If you are really toxic in public, imagine in private. And of course, there's exceptions to the rules. We all know somebody, they're like, oh my God, I'm shocked. And it's somebody like my dad who was just so good at masking and being duplicitous, you would never know he was so evil. So I think with Mr. Sensitive, it was this moment we could get very snippy and snappy, and it's something that I've realized, especially in my relationships with men in all forms, friends, bosses, and lovers. This snippy snappiness of kind of it never can be a discussion; it has to be a debate. It never can be about my feelings. It has to be about your feelings about my feelings. And we were nearing the end. We were nearing the end, and we were at this Halloween party and Josie said something, and it was, I just remember his face of him looking at me, kind of like, this one of, do you, like this, I don't know, it was like he was simultaneously saying, do you see what your friend is doing? Slash, oh shit, your friend sees what we're doing. And it's really tricky because part of being in toxic relationships, and especially abusive ones, is this dynamic of I'm going to punch the shiz out of you. And the minute you slap me, we're equals. And it's something that I think I spoke about in the episode Sperm Donor. Of my father was detestable to me. And I only really came at him once. I called him a sperm donor in public and he was mad and he never stopped bringing that up. And that was the one bad thing I ever did to that man. And he really thought it was equal to the times he stole from me and verbally assaulted me and humiliated me in front of everyone with a pulse. That moment. But that's how abusers do. The minute you fight back, you're in the same playing field. It's not self defense, it is 100% a boxing match. And they will act like you throwing one punch was a knockout compared to them actually knocking you out. And when you're dating a narcissist, they don't like, and understandably so, they don't like looking bad in public. I think what makes them narcissistic is that they're not good people. They are just incredibly sad people that want to look good and want somebody to pacify their sadness instead of getting the actual help they need to heal it. And I find that all the people that I dated have trauma histories, including him, Mr. Sensitive, that they use to justify why they were malicious towards others, particularly women. And it was something, you do keep on finding your parents as you become them. You keep on finding aspects of them in your relationships as you become them. If I'm becoming my mom, then I'm finding my dad. And he was not having it, not having it. And it was like, it went from this minute of kind of back and forth between them. And he looked at me to defend him. And this is why I felt like a coward. I had never had a friend defend me before. And it's, yes, it's in part because I had bad friends, but it's also in part because it was like I was raised to be so perfect and never say that I had any problems or issues, never complain. And it was like this really private issue that I thought was private, this really deep complaint that I was silencing, was suddenly revealed in the middle of a Halloween party by a mummy dressed Cleopatra. And it was so apparent and visible that I wanted to hide in me. And this is why I have checked myself as a friend, because I have been the friend of a person who's in a toxic relationship and try to call them out and try to defend them from their partner, and they recede even more. And it's because of that feeling that I'm talking about, where it's like you're so used to the toxic, living in the toxic, that when somebody tells you it's not normal, it's almost this overwhelming, you know, come to Jesus moment where it's like suddenly Jesus appears and he's like, "You ready to rise? Ready to go to heaven?" And you're like, "I'm in the middle of breakfast. What the F is going on? Is this the apocalypse? Did I die? Why are you here, Jesus?" It kind of feels like that. It's this overwhelming truth that you need to acknowledge, but it came in so quickly and simply and precisely that you don't know how to ignore it, but you know you have to because your brain is going to bust. But I told him, I'm not going to defend you. She's right. And it was something that we kept on arguing about, this idea that, it's like I was running on Jennifer Lopez and enough, self defense is not murder. If I defend myself from your attack, I'm not your attacker. But that was how my father framed things. Which is why he loved silence in his victims, and he loved my mom. She was quiet about his abusiveness. And if she told him, it was private and he could dismiss it. And I felt that he had that same dynamic with me, because his wife may have stalked us, but she had to find us. I wasn't finding them. I wasn't looking for them. I wasn't sending back his love letters that I still have. I wasn't sending them pictures of him that we still have. I wasn't fighting back. And that made me a really good victim. And that is what was happening with Mr. Sensitive. And I think he thought the bickering made me look as bad as him, or made us equals. We either looked witty to some people or we looked bad, but either way, we looked the same. And at that moment, Josie said, "No, you're worse." And then it erupted into whether friends should intervene in other friends' relationships, which obviously, yes, especially as a woman, we've got to have each other's back, I think. Feel free to opine. Um, and whether or not, he didn't, obviously, there was light notes of misogyny. I can't come at you because you're a woman the way you're coming at me. And the problem was, I don't know if anyone was coming at anyone. I mean, I can't say what she said wasn't a true observation, but he was escalating it with his anger. And he was angry because he was seen, not because he was being chastised. Do you know what I mean? It was because if he didn't know it was true, he would have let it go. But he always reacted badly when things were true. And the same thing went for my dad. It was this deer in headlights energy of like, "Oh my God, somebody saw my horns. Let me go hide because I was really trying to look like God." And I felt shame because like I said, I've always been in these relationships where I was too scared to talk to someone genuinely, to say how much I loved them and how much I hated them. It always had to be fun or bickery. And not even, it always gets bickery at the end because I said it in a prior episode. I do this like 6 week rapid fire I stay, and then I realize I'm staying in an absolute dookie, a dookie palace. And then I get angry at myself and them, and I try to do this like, I'm going to tell you everything I hate about this relationship. Let's fix it. You're not going to win anything with me. I'm not giving you anything anymore. And they are like, what the hell? And that's why I don't want to do it anymore. You can't just be with anybody just to be with them. I think my entire childhood proved you could be lonely with people. And obviously we ended, but it was strange to have, it was two things. It was one of my first experiences of having a friend that would defend me versus this experience of being the one that needed to be defended. And man, did I feel raw. I felt raw. So check out daddyrecovery.com for my stories. Check out Hardin for my music. And check out the Angel Reviews It All for my reviews. Check it out all out for my journey. Please follow me on socials. Thanks.